What's with this awful food? Don't stress out a pregnant woman, my son's wife yelled at me. Then, to my surprise, my usually mild-mannered and kind husband suddenly stood up and took away the meal. Never come back here again, he commanded. Excuse me? My son's wife froze on the spot. Too bad, Lily. Olivia, what do you mean? I looked down on my son's wife from above. A person who can't cherish their family is not fit to be my son's wife. My son's wife, usually so full of confidence, now had an unusually troubled look on her face. This was the end. My name is Olivia, and I'm 70 years old. This year marks the 40th anniversary of my marriage to my husband, Nicholas. Time flies faster than one would think. We met as classmates in college. He was always calm and gentle, and I was attracted to him from the start. But in our time, arranged marriages were the norm. Only a few could be with the one they loved, so I kept my feelings for him a secret. I thought it would be a bother if he knew, but by the second half of our college life, rumors somehow spread that I liked him. I quickly realized it was because I had confided in a classmate. What would I do if he found out? Not long after, my husband called me. Will you go out with me? For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. I never imagined the kind-hearted Nicholas, who was nice to everyone, would notice me. Besides, I thought he'd be arranged to meet some lovely young lady, but it was all a misunderstanding. I won't have an arranged marriage. I want to be with you, Olivia. His words marked the beginning of our relationship. Even as a couple, he treated me just as he did when we were friends. He was so thoughtful that he even gifted me trips on my birthdays. Was I really worthy of this much happiness? I was grateful to the classmate who shared my feelings. For the first time, I realized how wonderful it was to be with someone who reciprocated my love. We got married when we both turned 30. Our wedding was attended by all our college friends. Being blessed by everyone, I felt like the happiest person in the world. Our marriage continued smoothly, and our son, William, was born. He was our only child and my husband, and I raised him with all our love. I wanted him to grow up to be as kind as his father. Eventually, William grew up just as I had hoped, becoming a gentle and considerate man, kind to everyone. Even as an adult and working professional, he continued living at home. At that time, most of his peers were living independently, which made me worry about his future. I hoped he would marry and have a happy family, but I wondered if he felt the same. Of course, if he preferred staying with us, that was fine too. I knew we had to respect his decisions. My husband, ever so kind, chose to watch and wait. It's William's choice, he said, not interfering much. William continued to live with us until he turned 40. He was serious about his work. On his days off, he prioritized family and always took care of us. Maybe it's fine to stay together as a family, I began to think. Just the three of us living peacefully might be enough. But then my son made an announcement. I'm getting married. We were surprised by his sudden news. Congratulations. Thanks, Dad and Mom. I'll work hard to build a family like yours. Be happy, we told him. I wondered what kind of person my son's wife would be. I looked forward to meeting her. Her parents would also be there at the introduction. Finally, the day arrived. Nice to meet you. My son's wife's name was Lily. She was tall and had a cool demeanor. The in-laws, on the other hand, were both smiling and seemed kind. We're looking forward to being a family. They greeted us with a smile, making us smile too. I thought we could get along well with them. That's when it happened. William's parents are like grandparents, huh? My son's wife suddenly interjected. What are you saying? The in-laws scolded my son's wife. Well, I just thought they'd be younger. Y'all are old too. Initially, it seemed the in-laws were older than us. Isn't that an inappropriate way to talk to parents who raised you? I struggled to contain my anger. My son and his wife decided to live together in an apartment. For the first time, I felt a sense of loneliness being apart from my son. But this is the happiness my son, now over 40, has finally found. I decided to quietly watch over him, or so I thought. However, our peaceful life was soon to be disrupted. First, my husband seemed to take a liking to my son's wife. I was surprised he could like someone who spoke to us like that at our first meeting. When I asked him about it, he said, "It's better to have someone who speaks their mind clearly." I felt a bit bad recalling how timid I was when we first met. I even wondered if he actually preferred someone assertive like my son's wife. But since they lived apart, I thought we wouldn't have to interact much. Hopefully, they could live peacefully. We, a couple in our 70s, didn't have time to worry in the remaining years of our lives. Though my son left home after getting married, he surprisingly returned home frequently. Initially, it was once a week, then gradually increasing to 2 or 3 times. At first, I was happy as only my son returned. He would bring food and even help clean the house. Despite being busy with his own home, he cared for us, which was heartwarming. I was happy to have such a good son. But then, one day, his wife started coming with him. She's family now, so I want Lily to get along with you, Mom and Dad, he explained. It seemed my son was considering us and his wife. My husband, who initially liked her, was pleased, but for me, it was somewhat annoying. I couldn't change my first impression of her disdainful attitude. My husband didn't seem to mind, but it always bothered me. My son was trying to connect us, and I didn't want to dwell on it forever. Perhaps she might be a nice person after all. I waited for them that day. "We're home," my son said as they arrived. But what his wife said next shocked me. It's dirty." Was she talking about the entrance? I was sure I cleaned thoroughly. Was there something dirty? "What's wrong?" I asked as I went to check. "William's house is always dirty, isn't it? Maybe because y'all are so old," she remarked. It was clearly a jab at me. Our house is old indeed. It's the house we built right after we got married, over 40 years ago. It's true that it has become older and dirtier over the years, but is it appropriate for her, my daughter-in-law, to say that to me? When I got married, I treated my mother-in-law as my own parent. Without her, my husband wouldn't have been born, and we wouldn't have met. Plus, she was very kind, like my husband. I quickly realized that it was her upbringing that shaped my husband, so I respected her. But what about my son's wife? She doesn't treat me with the respect due to a mother-in-law and talks to me as if I'm a friend. I often hear that wives should be like friends nowadays, but something is different with her. She fundamentally lacks manners. It's rude to talk about age to someone you've just met, and she's too assertive towards us. "Your house is like a haunted house, huh?" she continued. "Well, it's an old house," my son responded to his wife with a smile. He seemed unaware that he was being ridiculed. In crucial aspects, my son grew up to be oblivious. This might lead him to be completely under his wife's thumb. My fears were becoming a reality. "Could you get some coffee?" she demanded. "I'll prepare it right now," I replied. This is terrible," she said after tasting it. "I'll get you another one," I offered. My son's wife thoroughly bossed me around. She acted as if it were her own home, not her in-laws. I appealed to my husband with my eyes, but he didn't even glance my way. My son's wife complained about the coffee I served. Did I replace it 5 times? Not wanting to waste the coffee, I secretly transferred the replaced coffee into another container. Finally, my son's wife seemed satisfied but didn't say a single word of thanks. Am I just a servant? Despite being treated like this, my son and husband didn't even try to help. Both were enamored by my son's wife. It was frustrating how they both seemed to like similar types of people. Even if she were my age, she's definitely not the type I'd want to be friends with. "We're going back to clean our house now," she said after complaining for a while. My son's wife finally left with my son. I was genuinely relieved they had gone. After they left, I thoroughly disinfected the cups and plates she used. I instinctively felt repulsed by my son's wife. I know I should get along with her since she's my son's wife, but instinctively, I don't want anything to do with her. I can't discuss this with my son or husband since they both like her, so I discreetly disinfect everything she's touched to ease my mind. That was the only way I could vent. My son and his wife continued to visit 2 or 3 times a week. Despite having a beautiful apartment, they mostly spent time at our house. Today, she talked about her family. I'm the middle of 3 sisters, sick of parents who only doted on my elder and younger sister. Most of her talk was complaints. Her elder and younger sisters went to good universities, but she, being the middle child, only graduated from a local junior college. She always seemed dissatisfied with her parents favoring her siblings, but I think they loved Lily too. My son tried to reassure her. I agree with him. If her parents didn't care for her, they wouldn't have smiled so warmly at our first meeting. When I shared this with her, she suddenly got angry. "I didn't ask for your opinion. Can you just be quiet?" she snapped. I intended to be thoughtful, but it only made her more uncomfortable. I really felt like nothing more than a servant, and being called you was particularly shocking. I realized she never called me Olivia since marrying my son. The thought of being just you to her felt empty. After venting her frustrations, she seemed satisfied and left. Then I meticulously cleaned the chair she had sat in. As I polished the chair, tears started to fall from my eyes. Why do I have to endure this? What about me does my son's wife dislike? It's not just me. She behaves the same way towards my husband and son and even her own parents. Does she have anyone she can open her heart to? I started to feel sorry for her, but remembering what she does, I couldn't help but be angry. I honestly didn't want to associate with a wife who treated our family like servants and called us you. However, the frequency of their visits increased, and they eventually spent every weekend at our house. No matter how badly my son's wife behaved, my son and husband just laughed it off. Like my husband, my son grew to be oblivious. Their kindness is great, but it can be exploited by the wrong people. For the first time, I was angry at my son and my husband. One day, we received news that my son's wife was pregnant. Though it should have been happy news, I had mixed feelings. We need to go shopping for clothes. Yes, what would be a good gift? My husband was overjoyed about the arrival of his first grandchild. Every time we went shopping, he would stop at the baby section to buy something. Thinking of it as my son's wife's child, I couldn't genuinely feel happy. I always worried if the child would grow up to be mean and domineering. I couldn't voice such thoughts, so I silently accompanied my husband on his gift selections. I continued to treat my son and his wife with the utmost hospitality when they visited. I just wish they could be a bit quieter. It's not a party hall. I felt increasing irritation towards my still domineering son's wife and my inability to be genuinely happy about the grandchild. Then an incident occurred. Olivia suddenly came to our house to give birth. Of course, I hadn't heard anything about this. My son was carrying a lot of his wife's luggage. Pregnant women need to eat nutritious food. In the sudden turn of events, I prepared a meal using what I had. It turned out delicious. I then took it to my son's wife. She still had a stern expression. As she tasted the food, she spat it out immediately. "What's this awful food? Don't stress out a pregnant woman." I didn't mean to. I was shocked to be spoken to like that. Even though my cooking didn't suit her taste, I had tried my best considering she was close to giving birth. But then an unexpected person appeared. My usually gentle and kind husband suddenly stood up and took away the dishes. What happened? I was surprised by my husband's sudden action. He looked coldly at my son's wife and said, "Never come back here." My son's wife was stunned. She probably never expected to be spoken to like that. My husband had always been very kind to her. She must have completely trusted that he was on her side. "You mean me?" "Never come back," she timidly asked my husband. "That's right. I won't tolerate anyone who looks down on my wife." "What?" My son's wife was defiant. "You're on my side, right?" She addressed my husband as you as well. I was utterly disgusted by her attitude. "Enough already," I yelled, and then the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this time? It turned out to be my son's wife's parents. We're sorry for the sudden visit. Her in-laws had come unexpectedly. They looked dismayed. "So you were here. Why are you here?" My son's wife was still defiant. "We came to take you back." "What?" I explained everything to the in-laws. Surprisingly, they didn't even know about the pregnancy. "We're sorry, she hasn't contacted us since the marriage. She hadn't reached out to them even once after getting married. They must have been quite upset." Her parents seemed regretful, admitting they might have favored the other sisters. "It's true we may have paid more attention to her sisters." That's exactly what my son's wife had said. I had heard that middle children sometimes become twisted or strong-willed, but I didn't expect it to be this extreme. Her in-laws then said to me, "We want to take responsibility as her parents. They seemed like such kind and considerate people. It was a shame." "Why did you tell them everything?" My son's wife looked at me coldly. I used to think her sharp eyes were cool, but now they seemed only to look down on others. "You need to leave this house," I said to her. "What are you talking about? I'm the wife of this house." She objected as expected, but I couldn't back down if I wanted to get rid of her. "What do you mean?" That's when the in-laws produced something. At first, I was confused, but then I realized it was a listening device. They played it, and it was a recording from inside their apartment. All that family is so useless, completely under my control. How stupid. The voice of my son's wife said, talking to a friend on the phone. Well, after the baby's born, I can use that as a reason to divorce and claim alimony. Any reason will do with those people. My husband and son were at a loss for words. I was speechless too. I couldn't believe she had been mocking our family like this. Her parents were silent as well. You really underestimated our family. I looked down on my son's wife as she crumbled. Too bad, Lily. Olivia, what do you mean? She didn't seem to realize what she had done. A person who can't cherish their family doesn't belong in ours. Until now, my son's wife had been bruni with confidence, but now her complexion was the worst I'd ever seen. This is the end, Lily. Let's go, said her father, who had been so cheerful when we first met, now had a demonic expression. Why do I have to leave? My son's wife was visibly shaken, hearing what was on that listening device. I'm at a loss for words. I never thought she was this kind of person. We're going home now, her father said. Wait, I'm already married. She resisted and didn't move. I was angered by her attitude. Don't you even appreciate being raised? I understand that you felt lonely because your parents paid more attention to your elder and younger sisters. I slammed the table. But they still came to see you. They've always been worried about you. My son's wife moved as if surprised. You repay kindness with ingratitude. Don't just hold grudges, make some effort yourself. She had always been a self-centered queen, never making any effort. Perhaps she was too caught up in her childhood memories to see the current situation. Please forgive me, Olivia, my son's wife apologized again, but it was too late. I never thought I had such a wife. Get out, my husband was also angry. The in-laws pulled away their crying daughter and left the house. Don't ever come near my family again. I screamed louder than I ever had before. Finally, the battle was over. After screaming, I collapsed to the ground, exhausted. It might have been the accumulation of all the fatigue, but my heart felt clear. My son and his wife eventually divorced after discussions with the in-laws. My son took custody of the child. It would be a pity for the child to be raised by her. My first grandchild resembled my son, and I was very relieved. The smile the child sometimes showed was just like my son's. My husband and son apologized to me later. They were initially shocked by her escalating behavior and lacked the courage to fight back, afraid of her retaliation. So they took it out on me. Don't get involved with strange people again, I said. They looked guilty but later laughed, perhaps realizing they had indeed been caught up with a strange person. Oh, my sweet grandchild, my kind husband and son. Now we're living peacefully as a family of 4. I've come to realize again how much I love spending time with my family. I want to enjoy today peacefully, looking forward to my grandchild's growth.